Hello and welcome to episode 422 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and listeners, we have a lot of Suikoden fans, both among our readership and listenership, and among our staff. So, directly leading from that, one of the most anticipated games of 2024 among our listenership and readership and staff was Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, a successor or spiritual successor to Suikoden in all but name. So we had so many people excited for this, we sort of knew we wanted to do a podcast episode dedicated to it before the game even came out. So before we get into the meat of that podcast, let's introduce the panel, starting with Gio Castillo.
Hello.
And Audra Bowling.
Hiya.
And Zach Wilkerson.
Howdy.
Zach, Audra, Gio, I think it goes without saying, all four of us were really excited for this game in the lead up to its release. And it was a kind of a dramatic one because it was delayed multiple times. And then tragically, the creator of Suikoden and Eiyuden, Yoshitaka Murayama, passed away a few months before the release of Eiyuden, which is still shocking to me a few months later. But when it finally came out, I think the reception was, putting it diplomatically, warm but mixed. There's a lot of discussion about what it does and doesn't do very well for a game released in 2024, and it was being held to a near impossible standard, because it specifically resembles like a PS1 era game and not a PS2 era game. So people were comparing it to Suikoden 1 and 2 a lot in discussions surrounding Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. But before we get into the meat of this discussion, I want everyone's anticipation. Like, what were your feelings going into Eiyuden Chronicle? And without giving too much away, what were your sort of impressions as you were playing it? Try to transport yourself to a time of perhaps a month or two ago when you played this game. Mostly looking at Zach here. So Zach, how much were you anticipating Eiyuden going in, and what were your sort of impressions as you were playing it for the first time?
I mean, my expectations were unreasonable, honestly. Through the roof. My most anticipated game in years, and it didn't live up to that. And I was definitely disappointed on the whole, and I have some criticisms of the game, but I still enjoyed my time with it, even if I didn't think it really did everything it could do.
All right. I appreciate you holding back a little bit so we can still have a podcast to discuss the rest of it. Gio, same question. What were your feelings going in, and what were your impressions sort of partway through playing it?
Oh, it was my most anticipated game too, like in many, many years. And then I read Zach's review and I was like, you know, maybe I don't want to play this anymore. I don't know. I got really disappointed. Like I was like, you know what Zach's saying makes sense. I'm gonna give it a shot, but my expectations are considerably like lower. And I think that helped because when I played it, I was like, hey, you know what? This isn't so bad. Like if I just play it for what it is, like it's really a decent game in its own right. Maybe not what I wanted or expected, but it scratches that itch. It scratches that itch. So in the end, I think I do like the game quite a bit, quite a bit.
Okay, now Audra, same question to you. Your level of anticipation or hype going in, and then your somewhat abridged impressions as you were playing.
Mine was hopeful in anticipation, and that increased a little bit after I played Rising just a couple days before diving into the main 100 Heroes game. I think I probably lean more towards what Gio said. I had lowered expectations after reading some of the thoughts people had about it, but it ended up being kind of a decent game in and of itself. And I quite liked it by the end, but maybe not as high as I would have hoped.
Interesting. Well, I hate to just add myself to the chorus of like shrugs and nods. But yeah, my anticipation for this was probably less than that of Gio or Zach. This was not my most anticipated game of the year. That was probably Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. But I was pretty excited for it. I gave to the Kickstarter in 2020. And when the copy was available to me, I was pretty pumped to start it. But my feelings are going up and down as I played it. I thought it sort of started too slow, but then I was really enjoying it when I was sort of in the thick of building and recruiting and and team building. But then my excitement sort of waned at the end. Like I think this is a very good RPG that has some pretty clearly defined strengths and weaknesses. But because Suikoden 1 and 2 are really all-time classics, especially Suikoden 2, I feel like it, even before Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes came out, it was being held against an impossible standard. But let's get into it a little bit more. I mentioned a Kickstarter, and Audra mentioned Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. The Kickstarter landed in 2020. It's one of the 5 or so biggest video game Kickstarters of all time. It raised the equivalent of $4.5 million in U.S. currency, and it had a prequel game that was a sort of Metroidvania style action RPG called Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. It come out in 2022, and that stars CJ, Isha, and Garu. Yeah, who are 3 characters that you can meet and recruit, and actually have medium-sized story roles at some point in Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. So and there's also a lot of cameos in Rising, or I should say minor characters in Rising that are also recruitable, or at least visible again in 100 Heroes 2 years later. And so you start out as a young man named Noah, who's from a small town in the Eltis Vice region. He joins a sort of a local militia called the Watch. He immediately makes a few friends on his squad, and you start out doing a joint exercise with some people from the empires. Is it the Galdean Empire?
Yes, it's like
Yeah.
Galdea.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think there's another RPG that has an evil organization called the Galdean Empire. Oh man, maybe I'm just already hinting at how generic the story is sometimes.
It wouldn't
But
shock me.
but it's sort of, this is giving you an introduction for the world at play here. There's an alliance of small nations next to a large sort of monolithic empire, and the empire is trying to overstep its bounds and break small diplomatic treaties here and there to see how much they can get away with. And the empire is really interested in collecting rune lenses, which are ancient artifacts that may grant access to great power from civilizations long past. And I don't want to go over every plot point moment by moment, but very, very oversimplified. Noah and people from Eltis Weiss end up losing a military skirmish to the Empire based on some trumped up charges that the Empire made up. And they flee to a castle ruin that you discover earlier in the game. And then Noah becomes the leader of the Resistance, or the Resistance Army, which is sort of your classic Suikoden castle town, raising it from nothing, recruiting as many talented individuals as you can, both building your army and also building your town. So your recruits are everything from frontline fighters to shopkeepers to hunter gatherers and whatnot. And throughout the game, the balance is navigating this world has a story that is sometimes supernatural, but is also but is very deliberately political in nature. And as you're meeting new people and going new places, you recruit more people from your base to your base. And the city building aspect and the more traditional Japanese RPG aspects kind of go hand in hand the whole game. And I mentioned this earlier, but I thought the beginning of this game was almost too slow. It I just did not care about hardly anyone that was in this political conflict. And the one character I actually thought stood out a little bit to me was Periel, the Countess of Eltis Weiss.
Yes.
She's
Yes.
She has a lot of personality. She's both savvy and spunky. She sort of immediately realizes, this Noah guy is special. Maybe he could be maybe he can work with me on this. And she is sort of one of the front-facing leaders of the alliance alongside Noah and a few others. Sometimes like when I was watching this happening, I was either so bored or annoyed with the early goings on. Like Periel's intervention was almost like her saving the dialogue for me. It's like, oh man, like just get out of this castle under siege. What the hell's going on? Oh, here's Periel to make me interested in the game again. And then this is all from the first,
Yeah.
several hours. And I think the game really begins when you finally get to your headquarters and have a little bit more freedom in traveling. They take too long to give you the fast travel character as well.
That's Suikoden
Yes.
style.
Yeah,
for days, though.
I know, but I wanted it way earlier. It's like I'm playing a Metroidvania game. You don't give me a double jump until like a third of the way through the game. You should get the double jump within the first 30 minutes of the game. But I've been talking too much already. Like that's, I think, when the game gets sort of the rhythm of the game gets more palatable. But how did you guys find the early goings on of the game?
I didn't like it. It was unbearably slow, and like, it felt like it was skipping a few steps too. Like I was like, why was I being expected to care about Noah or like Sane? Like they did this whole confrontation like ahead of like them absconding from Altus Weiss, right? And like I was like, I don't care about these guys. Like
Right,
what's it?
Sane is like the second protagonist of the game, who's a young noble from the Galdian Empire. He he's a friendly acquaintance of Noah from that early mission, but then Noah and him find themselves on opposite sides during the siege at Eltisweiss. But
Right.
I'm with you. Like they're really trying to make the Noah and Sane relationship feel special when there isn't much there at all.
Yeah, they're acquaintances. They're not like besties. They're not like
they
they're nowhere
they shared a
near.
meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the extent of it. But and so that give it kind of put the give me a sour taste at first, but like the game gets better later on, but it never really does build an interesting relationship between them at all. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I didn't like the first part of the game very much.
Yeah, I mean, I think Geo captures almost perfectly what my fundamental issue with the game is. And I know that it is bad criticism to compare something to something else, right? Like I can say like this is not Suikoden, and I get that that's an unfair comparison, but this game is Suikoden. It just is. Like in every way that matters, it is Suikoden. And in every Suikoden game prior, you had these familial relationships or these deep-seated relationships that had years behind them. And so I cared about those early goings, those early moments, and those early moments don't work there. And I actually think that like that moment with a campfire is in like the first 7 hours, like which was part of the beta, are like the best scenes, because when I was watching it, I was like, oh, you're gonna develop this into something different. Even though I, like both of you, thought that those opening 7, 8, 9 hours were pretty boring. But I thought, okay, you're gonna do something with this. But instead, they turn Noah into a nothing burger of a character, which makes his relationship with Sign, who I actually think is an okay character, not really work. So, and I hate to boil it down to those two characters, but I feel like that's what the game wants to be, and that's the game never gets to be.
I have sort of two comments here that are, I think, sort of piling on to what both you and Geo said, Zach. I think they wanted us to care about the Noah and Sign relationship, but they didn't give us enough to go with to actually care about it. Like maybe if something with more stakes happened between them than getting separated in the ruins at the beginning of the game with the campfire scene. Like if what they went through together was more, maybe we would care about them more. But they want us to feel like these are two destined to fight and be great rivals or great friends, like a Rio and Joey or a Ramza and Dalita. But it's just not there. I didn't find myself interested in there at all. And also, I mean, Noah really is a an uninteresting protagonist. I think the most interesting thing about him is that he fights with hook swords, which are an uncommon weapon in RPGs. But maybe this is my Dragon Quest appreciation showing. I think they probably could have pulled off Noah being a silent protagonist. It would have made
Would have been better.
It would have made all the voice dialogue in this game somewhat awkward, but it almost would make more sense because he's such a blank slate character. It's like I mean, he's surrounded by so many more interesting characters. His responses felt like wooden and almost unusually bad.
Yeah, I feel like they really waited too long to even give him a kind of proper backstory.
Even when his village is attacked and burnt down, all the villagers are safe, and they said we'll be okay and rebuild the village right away. It's like
Right.
you're almost like manufacturing a classic revenge motivation for him, but then you're waving it and saying it's okay. It's okay right afterwards. And there's even a moment that I thought was going to be a big problem. After Duke's Aldrich, the main character, the main villain of the game, who is definitely a Luca Blight cosplayer. If Eiyuden is a Suikoden cosplayer,
cosplay is very kind.
Yeah, I know. Like he sacks Altus Weiss, but also captures Periel, but then lets Periel walk free, and she just joins you again, and there's no consequences from that. It's like, really, you're not gonna keep her as a hostage. You're just gonna let her go, and now everything's fine, and you can even travel back to Altus Weiss without any issue at any point during the game. It's like the world state barely changes, but they want all of the actions of these villains to feel like they have weight, but it just feels weightless to me. Like Suikoden 2 has some absolutely wild stuff happen in the first few hours that make the dire seriousness of the war and the motivation of the main characters very, very clear. But it's like they want to introduce big drama, so we care about these characters. But in Eiyuden, it's like the drama isn't there, so I don't care about these characters. It's a and again, I mentioned Periel is one of my favorites because I think she's well written and has a fun personality. But I mean, that's just one character out of 120 they want us to care about.
Sorry, I think there's only like one time where they really go into the high stakes of people dying and stuff, and it's kind of like off-screen deaths that they don't really cover beyond just that some characters get upset about them.
Yeah, there's the execution of the king in what's the name, Athribalt, the fourth big town you go to,
and like Yailu and Milo's parents.
Right, that's right. Yeah, right around the middle of the game in the in the mission in Galdea. It's I don't know. It really feels like they want us to care about this world and these characters. They don't give us enough to go with. The missions you do right after Altus Weiss is taken, you're introduced to more corners of the world. You go to you do a mission in the Great Wood, which is the forest that sort of connects a lot of the world together. A lot of Eiyuden Chronicle Rising takes place in the Great Wood, and you meet the village of tree folk, who are all very, very cute. I was a little sort of disappointed only one tree folk joins you.
Yes.
And then you go to Euchris, which is a sort of an East Asian aesthetic region that's right next to Altus Weiss. And you recruit more characters there, and you meet the somewhat wishy-washy young king of Euchris. It's basically you're trying to convince them that Galdea is a threat, and they don't believe you until Galdea basically like almost conquers them, and then it's just on to warning the next region.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that like that I liked that sequence. And for the record, I know that I sound like a hater here, but I'm really not. Like I think that sequence, while I mostly enjoyed it, gets to one of the fundamental problems, because the young king is being manipulated by a sleeper agent, by like some I don't remember what his position is, but he's being manipulated by somebody who's working for Galdea and is going to get something from Galdea. Galdea doesn't have any stakes in this besides just domination. And that, if you're trying to tell a good political story with someone like Sign, who Sign, this is a spoiler cast, so I'm going to get ahead of myself for a second here. Sign joins your party so early, like there's no gray areas here. Like Galdea is evil, period. End of conversation. There's nothing more to it. Whereas there's not really any push-pull between the gray areas of war, the consequences of war, as Audra very astutely pointed out. It's just like standard JRPG fare, which is fine, but it aspires to something higher and it fails to reach that.
Yeah, it presents a complicated political narrative, but it's really not that complicated. It's the Galdea is the evil empire, and everyone else is are nations that are in danger of being swallowed up by the Galdeans, but might have, there might be some betrayals or unexpected situations occurring, but it's a more generic RPG story that's trying to be a complicated political story. And I mean, a lot of the best villains in video games and other media are ones that truly believe in their cause. And and I think Aldrich does believe in what he's doing, but what he's doing is just uninteresting. He's like, I want to conquer everyone because I'm the best, and I will be a better ruler than anyone else. And I don't care if people suffer because I'm going to push technology forward. And so it doesn't matter that I wiped out a village and experimented on all the people in it. It's he is he he is an obvious megalomaniacal villain that I think they want us to hate him more than we do. I just couldn't care about him.
I kind of just thought he'd like twirl his mustache at certain points.
He has an eminently twirlable mustache, is true.
Yes.
Yeah, the stuff surrounding him, like I mean, like they touch on it very lightly throughout the game, but like the conclave of something something, that's a bit more interesting, and it's like it's obvious sequel bait, but I mean,
the fox mask woman.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's a shadow organization that Aldrich is working with that really also wants him to gain control of as many rune lenses as possible. So and they obviously have a agenda that's separate from what the Galdean Empire wants to do. But I mean, they're just occasional boss fights throughout the game, and there is a moment where one of them has an assassination attempt on one of your characters late in the game. But
oh yeah,
but
yeah.
otherwise, yeah. He's in that organization. Remember, but it ultimately we're left with very few answers about them, and they're just mid bosses alongside Aldrich. And but I have been attacking this game for having a generic storyline that I was struggling to connect to, and that is true. But I want to talk about the thing that I liked the most about Eiyuden, and again, it is just cosplaying as Suikoden again in this way. But I really do like building up your castle town. It's satisfying, going through the upgrade tree and seeing the state of your village, of your town, change as you upgrade every part of it. I was more motivated to move along the story to unlock new kinds of building materials. Because when I was in the middle of the Eucharist stuff, I'm like, oh man, where can I get excellent lacquer? And then I'm like, oh, excellent lacquer unlocks after I finish Eucharist. Let's move this damn story along. But like the seeing my Castletown build and having my army increase in size slowly were the parts of Suikoden mimicry that I found the most entertaining, and that's what kept me playing. Like I even did a some amount of resource grinding and mini game overplaying. I mean I dare say I enjoyed egg races in this game, which are completely optional and don't have great rewards. And I at the end of the game, you get a scene with the person in town you've spoken to the most. And my scene was with the guild master because I was talking to the guild master so much to get my resources together.
I had no idea that was what triggered that.
Yeah,
I had the card guy.
Yeah, a lot of Yeah, for a lot of people, it's like the innkeeper or the guildmaster. But there's that scene for almost everyone else in the game besides Noah. You can find those scenes on YouTube if you're interested. But because I was always talking to the guild people and trying to get the right resources to build my castle more, I mean, he was my most talked to NPC. So yeah, like I really enjoyed this part of the game, and let's try to keep it to the first half. Was there a recruit? Could be combat or non-combat in the early to mid game. Could be a character design or how they behave in battle, or what they do in town. That was a particular favorite of yours. Anyone that wants to go first?
So for me, it's definitely Yugo, and it's not just because his character design is awesome, but because he was my MVP in my party until like the very, very late stages where he was slightly upstaged by a couple of characters. He's like this badass samurai guy you get very early on, I think in Euchris, maybe even before that.
No,
And
he's in the starting town. He's in
yeah,
Eltisvice.
yeah, he's an Eltis, and he carried me for so much of the game. Um, in terms of like characters, like I think that there are two good characters in this game, Periel and Sign, and I refused to take either of them out of my party once I got far enough because I like them so much. And this game isn't very challenging, but like he was my MVP. He just dished out so much damage if you like allowed him to build up his meter.
I had a similar favorite character because they were just a really strong attacker that never left my party once she joined, and that's Lam, the old lady. She's an elderly woman who's mastered martial arts chi so much that she can transform into a younger version of herself at will, and she can't learn spells. The only spell she learns is like 100 SP to turn into her younger self, and then she can spend it's I think is it AP or BP? I'm mixing up the Eiyuden terminology here to use a super attack that turns her old again. But she is a back row attacker that is just super strong from the get go, and I like and to recruit her, you have to bring one of her old martial arts rivals who doesn't recognize her because she's in her younger form, and she is sort of like she's sort of like a funny old grandma that's also a dangerous martial arts master, and I just loved everything about that design. And she almost never left my party. She was super good grapple long range damage that I she was literally in my final party for the final boss.
True story. For a long time, the game was bugged. At least when I played it, it definitely was. That you actually couldn't recruit her. So I
That is
am
tragic because
extremely jealous of you because she sounds awesome.
I feel so bad, man. She was no joke in terms of just design and fun in battle. She was like a top 3 character for me.
Yep. The person who told me where to go to get people was like, "Go here with this character," and I was like, "Wait, this person still won't join me." It's a bug that's been resolved since, but yeah, that's awesome.
Audra or Geo, do you have an early game favorite?
Early game, it would be either Gagina, the stone lion, and say that in
Oh,
quotes. I actually quite like them. They were very useful in battle, or the hunter siblings, Marina and Wilder, I think.
yeah, Marin is really
Oh,
good
Marin, sorry.
in your support role because she increases your gathering potential.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're trying to get a bunch of different resources at once, like I was for the first 2/3 of the game, she's really really handy. And the stone lion, is that the person wearing like a Balinese style lion mask?
Yes, I think
Right.
it's like an actual cat.
Oh.
It looks like a
Okay.
little cat under it, but
Oh, I didn't notice that detail, but that's a very fun concept.
Yeah, for me, I'll be that guy. I'll be that guy because I don't think anyone's ever mentioned her, like even online. But like, I like Liane, the Nanami stand-in kind of.
Yeah, she's one of
yeah.
she's one of Noah's companions in the watch. She's in your like starting 4 characters basically.
Yeah, and like her, I don't know. I think it's her voice actress is very convincing, and so like her lines really land for me. Like I found her extremely funny. And so I kind of like the funny characters. So like there's like another one, Francesca. Like you meet really early
Oh
on.
yes.
Francesca's
You
your
mean Francesca?
yeah. I think she's like a Suikeban style character, so like a rude delinquent girl, but also she's like a holy cleric trying to heal. She will beat the hell out of people with her staff and then apologize and heal to them.
Yeah.
But it's she's very very funny. Like and again she's like your earliest character that's obviously intended to be a healer.
Yeah. So she was definitely there in the because she was like my only healer and surprisingly powerful. Like with the when you can power her up, it just takes a while for her to like get the SP for it. But yeah, she can one shot enemies when she gets there.
Yeah,
And yeah,
one thing about the combat balance of this game, um, I was a little disappointed in magic characters early in the game because anything outside of like the simplest heal spell costs 40 or 50 SP when their max SP is like 120 or something. Like you really can't, and there's not a ton of healing magic SP healing items to go around, so it's really hard to have a capable magic using character until much later where you have means of recovering SP more easily and your SP limits are higher, and I think there's a way to heal it in between battles. Um, so like at the beginning of the game, magic characters seem sort of terrible, but towards the mid game and end game, they're like, oh, you want at least one mage on your team because magic spells can be quite strong. Although towards the end, I mostly used rune shards, which were like free spell casts that enemies dropped all the time, and because I had like the increased drop rate equipment on all the time, I ended up with just dozens of rune shards in my possession for the last couple of dungeons. But
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, Sane basically joins. Is it Sane or Sign? I'm gonna say both of them probably this entire episode, and I know that only one can be correct, so I apologize in advance, Zach. Uh, like Sign basically joins Noah's cause after their second fight on opposite sides and probably third meeting in their entire lives.
Yeah.
But they're presented as like these co-protagonists that I just never bought. Um, but after Sign joins your team, you have like sort of a split narrative going where Noah takes whoever's in your army available to the warrior nation of Impershiarch to try and recruit them to fight against the Gullian Empire, while Sign takes his mostly Imperial cadre to raid an Imperial laboratory to figure out what Aldrich is doing with rune lenses. And I think you can do those in sort of either order, but it feels like you're supposed to do Sign's stuff after the Impershiarch stuff. At least that's how it felt like it was presented to me. And I mean, without dwelling too much on this part of the game, I love the sand sharks. I find them so funny. A civilization of sharks that talk like pirates but are afraid of water and refuse and even have doubts that their desert used to be a primordial ocean. But like the sand race loving warrior sharks of the desert, I just found them all very very funny, and one of them, Eupharius, was a mainstay in my party for a while after he joined.
Oh yeah, I love them too, and especially love their little fawn that they do to like pump themselves up. I thought that was cute whenever they played it.
I remember this part because like I actually played it on mute for some reason. I think Tin was doing something at the time, but I remember this part was really annoying because of the race, and I never understood the mechanics. So actually, Tin did that part for me.
Oh,
The
Yeah.
mechanics are inscrutable, so don't feel bad.
I
Yeah.
remember winning the race, or getting at least under the time, but not sure how or why it happened.
Yep.
And at one point, sometimes I played this game on PS5, but it was a PS4 copy of the game because when I pre-ordered this game years ago, I don't think the PS5 existed yet. So I had a PS4 copy, played on PS5, but for some reason, sometimes if there was a lot of textures going on, at once, like the water near Hishan, which is the capital of Euchris, or like the sandstorm, like the sand and wind together in those racing sequences. Sometimes these textures would just fall apart and turn into like a giant static aurora borealis where I couldn't see anything. So I like sometimes the game just like turned into like fireworks hell. But I remember that happened during one race, but I somehow won anyway. The mechanics are inscrutable, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, like I got turned around like 3 times and still managed to win somehow. I don't know. Yeah, but I did like this part of the game, and I especially like the sign part, because it
was an actual plot.
Had actual plot, yes, but also because like Sign is an interesting character. Like he has things underneath. Like he has like tension. That's like something that Noah doesn't have. There's no decision making for Noah. All the decisions are made for Noah. Whereas for Sign, like a lot of the decisions that he makes, even though he makes them earlier than I'd like, and it reduces the tension of the game in general, he still has some tension. He still has some loyalty to Galdea. And you play as him a couple of different times, and both times I was like, this game will be better if he was the protagonist. And I know they want to sell Marissa and Sign and Noah as 3 protagonists, but that's just BS. Like Noah is the protagonist.
Noah is the protagonist, and he's the least interesting of those 3.
Right, exactly. So, but I still enjoyed Imperishark. I still, or whatever, however the hell you say it. And I enjoyed Sign's part because you get to see the experimentation, which I think was us getting some stakes for once, which was nice.
I agree that like Sign has some juice behind his character. In this part of the game, you realize that. Well, I mean, you probably already knew this, but he's the scion of a noble house. He had an older brother that died in an earlier military conflict, and so Sign was probably originally going to be having a little more freedom in his life choices, but was sort of like pushed into a career in the military and being the future head of household in a way that he maybe didn't want. So he feels a sense of guilt about his brother and a duty for what his family should be doing, but also he's basically a good person that doesn't want atrocities to happen in his country. So it's there is he has more interesting parts of his character than Noah ever does. That's definitely true. Plus, I think his attendants are a pretty fun group. Like this little side story about them going to the Empire is like there's even a fun character dynamic that you have here, including one engineer that might be in actual romantic love with the tank that he maintains.
Oh yeah,
yeah. that was an odd choice. But anyway, I mean, we mentioned Marisa already. She is a member of the Guardians, which is sort of an organization dedicated to the protection of the Great Wood. You meet her a little bit earlier in the game in the section where you go to the Treefolk Village, but she joins you more permanently after the Imperishark and Galdia portions of the game. She even joins with Garou, the Kangaroo Man from Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. And so for this section, you travel through and find the Guardian village in the woods, and then cross the woods to sort of I would say the 4th large city area of the game, Athrabalt, which is a sort of mountainous zone, I guess. The city itself is pretty big, but I mean, you're visiting another corner of the world. Marissa is part of these woodland guardians. Her boss, Wave, is maybe my favorite second half character of the game.
I love him.
Wave is awesome. Yeah, he looks
also
like
excellent in battle.
Yeah, he Wave, like Lam, was one of my mainstays when he permanently joins. But yeah, Wave is almost like he's a character that's from a cooler game that snuck his way into this one. But yeah, also Athrabalt continues a somewhat unusual trend of every monarch besides Periel or Aldrich being completely useless until they're forced to act by being invaded. because the king of Athrobalt is doesn't believe in the threat, doesn't want to support the alliance or the resistance, and he ends up getting captured and then executed for his executed off screen for his hesitation. But his the head general of Athrobalt, Electra, is a really cool character, and she
Yeah.
and if anything, the only thing wrong about her is that she joins you way too late. You will basically only have endgame stuff by the time Electra joins.
Yeah, I hated that she joined so late and then like the dragon newt people.
Yeah, they're is what's the name of the dragon newt countries? Is it Kelan or Kasan? Kenan, that's it. Yeah, I think it's Kenan. They mention Kenan being a one of the other biggest kingdoms in the alliance, but you don't even realize that they're dragon people until like 3/4 of the way through the game. They're like, oh yeah, all these this contingent of dragon people are from Kenan, and their king tries to sell out the alliance to the Galdian Empire, but his two lead generals betray him and join your side instead. And again, this is all like in the last, you're at the 90% mark or something of playing
Yeah.
through when all of that happens. But they're hinting that this world is much bigger than it is. But when they make references that we're supposed to understand or talk or introduce a corner of the world that is supposed to feel natural, it feels like it comes from out of left field because there's hardly any foreshadowing or uh or setup for it. Like I know this is not very sophisticated language, but the second half of Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes feels like just plot points being thrown at you willy-nilly without much connecting tissue. Like you rescue some kids from an ice cavern, and then 5 minutes later, you're stopping the invasion of Athrobalt and then escaping Athrobalt. And it's I don't like it just didn't feel connected or with any weight at any point.
I mean, to me, it felt like they ran out of money, honestly, because like I was enjoying the middle portion of this game, um, and then like everything just feels so rushed, and like that feels rushed. The end of the game feels rushed. It just feels like it had to happen so fast, and it was like, what? Like, where's all my context? Where's all my, sort of surrounding stuff? And I feel like all their money went into like the stuff they had to support for like Kickstarter, um, which oftentimes was base stuff, which I think the base stuff was phenomenal. But like, I feel like the story falls really short, partially because they had to divert so much money towards that.
Well, I agree pretty much. I mean, I kind of even felt like when they did the Marissa's home getting taken over by the Revenants, it was very kind of low budget almost when they showed the monster showing up. And then similarly, they did the low stakes again, where everyone survives, even though it was supposed to be like a big tragedy.
Yeah, there's invasions by the undead and invasions by the Empire, and it feels like nobody dies and hardly anyone suffers except for the executed king of Athrobalt.
Yeah.
But they have so many fun designs. Like individual character designs are really really good in this game. Every time I met someone new to recruit, I would be interested in the game again because the base building and and recurring character recruitment were super super fun. And I was more in, and I mentioned this before, I was more interested in finding more materials for base building and more characters to recruit than any part of the main story of this game.
But the recruitment phase was excellent, I thought. I really had fun with that.
And speaking of recruits,
Did you guys like Beyblade?
Oh boy, I didn't realize this, but Beigoma is a Japanese word that means spinning top, and collecting Beigomas for duels is something that's been happening in Japan for hundreds of years. And Beyblades are a name pun of Beigoma, not the other way around. But
Ah.
still introducing an entire Beyblade style like mini game arc. Like, I don't mind that it exists. I do mind very much that it's impossible to get going early on in the game because you can't win any Beigoma battles with your starting top. Your starting top sucks. But by the end of the game, I had defeated a bunch of strong monsters and had some good tops and just sort of did the entire Begoma quest at once. So that I think the Begoma quest is badly paced, and Reed sucks. The character that you get from it at the end, who is an anime ass protagonist. But I still liked it more than most of the main story. And you know what? Speaking of which, I mentioned egg races before. They have these spinning top battles. There's also a pretty detailed card game. That's
The card game I liked.
I thought the
actually.
card game was fun, but the thing about this is that this game is just loaded with mini games and and alternate gameplay styles connected to like one building in your town or one character to recruit. And I wish they were all as good as the card game, because I was really sick of Begomas by the end, because I think you have to do around 25 Begoma duels before Reed will join. And
Yeah,
I
stopped
think
after he joined.
yeah,
I was
I think for the card game, you only need to do like 3 or 4 card battles before the one the Styrian woman who challenges you to cards as a means of recruiting her. You only have to do a couple fights to unlock her, but the card game was fun enough that I just kept playing to unlock more cards.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it enough that apparently Glenn became my BFF, which made more sense than no one saying that.
Yeah, I mean, like I love the stuff to do around the town. I didn't do all of it because, again, pre-release here. But
Oh, you didn't raise any 5-star egg racers like I did?
I didn't even recruit the egg racer. But I did recruit the person who does theater shows. And those
Oh
were
yes.
absolutely fantastic.
Those are really good.
Because you only have 2 options for theater shows, but you have like thousands of options within them, where you can choose like who to have play which role, and like they all have their own unique dialogue. It's all voiced, which Scott at RPG Fan is very excited about. And
There's a lot of voice dialogue in general in this game.
yeah, which is very impressive. And I thought that was really cool. I was obsessed with like getting new nodes on my castle recruitment. Like I think like the castle recruitment here is like so much better than it's ever been in Suikoden. That it elevates the game significantly, because it's just like so fun and it's so engaging and it's so like you can do like this next thing and you get another thing and you get this next thing and do another thing. It's so quick. I think it's excellent.
One thing that I find frustrating about the older Suikoden games, and I've only played the first 3, is that there is a lot of missable content if you accidentally like miss the tight recruitment window to get this one certain character. In Eiyuden, you can go back and recruit almost anyone except for the very final character and one character that is missable, because they require Marissa to be in your party, and Marissa leaves at one point. So going from several missable characters to just 1 or 2, I think shows a sort of a player friendliness that's very 2024 and not very 1995.
I agree, but I also think it leads to the issues you were talking about earlier, where like you can go back to a town that you absolutely should not be allowed back into.
That's true, yeah. Like Altus Weiss should be under imperial occupation and completely hostile, but you can go back there and like talk to Isha and have her fill out a stamp card so she joins your party.
Yeah,
Plus, Isha's a beast. She was one of my mains for the whole middle of the game. Yeah,
was my MVP for the last 50%. Besides Yugo, yeah. So yeah, I agree. It's just I think that it does the side content so well that I wish it did the main content much better.
You know, we did this already earlier in the episode, but let's talk about second half recruits that you found particularly interesting or fun. We mentioned a couple like Isha and Wave, but is there a character that joins like after the events of Euchris that you really liked and was maybe became a favorite or became a main for you?
Hakugen, easy.
Oh
She
yes.
helped carry my team. She's like a friend of Mio. Like you find her like in some random village, and
Yeah,
then
no,
she's like,
she's in Defan Village, the same place where you get Lam, but she's an old friend of Mio, one of the starting characters, the samurai lady, and yeah, but Hakugin the ninja girl is a very very good attacker the whole game.
Also in my party for most of the game, so good pick.
I used her, like her and Lam and random magic user were my back line for a large portion of the game.
Along with Isha, I had Guru and CJ on the party, and their unite attack or combo attack was just kick butt.
There is a super unite attack if your party is Noah, Sign, Marissa, CJ, Isha, and Guru.
oh my
that
god,
is it is a 6-person combination attack that is I pulled off once just to see what it looked like.
Oh wow. And also mad props to Momo.
Oh,
is
Momo, yeah, Momo is busted. I like if I had to pick a most powerful character in the game, it's probably Momo. He's a better magic user than Isha. Insane rune grid. You can put like I think you can put as many as 4-star magic runes there, and their unique ability increases their magic defense and magic attack by 6% per AP that you have, and you want Momo to just cast spells anyway, so they won't be spending their AP. Momo's broken, and Momo appears to be a very cute magical girl, but Momo is male and an ancient wizard from hundreds of years ago who came to the conclusion that the ultimate pursuit of power is just the pursuit of cuteness. So he strives to make himself as cute as possible. So appears to be a magical girl who can do like combination attacks with with Malor and I think one of the other cute girly characters in the game. So it's Momo is very fun, but also kind of terrifyingly powerful. The one character that I felt made the game too easy at the end was Dijkstra. He's a Styrian, which are the sort of Minotaur people, and instead of a defend command, he gets the command Powerful Warcry, which, like defend, always happens at the beginning of your turn, and it doubles the attack power of your entire party for that turn. So
that's busted.
Yeah, if you have my party for the rest of the game was Dijkstra, one magic user who was sometimes a Momo, sometimes Isha, and then 4 attackers. And I would have Dijkstra just use Powerful Warcry every turn. My other attackers would annihilate everything, and then I would have one spellcaster. But it's so powerful, and because Dijkstra's never going to attack, I just use his entire equipment and entire rune grid to increase his HP and defense as much as possible. So he had like 750 HP and was taking 1 or 2 damage all the time. He was unkillable and a brokenly powerful support unit. And because I sometimes gravitate towards busted power in RPGs, he was in my party for the entire last quarter.
Very nice.
Do you have a second half favorite, Zach?
I mean, we've chosen all of mine at this point. Wave, Isha, those are my 2 mains.
Man, I remember my final party getting pretty attached to it. It was Dijkstra, either Isha or Momo. Then I had CJ and Wave in the front, and Lam and Lakian in the back. Lakian is the chieftain of the elves, and you never actually go to the elven village, but you know that they're a society somewhere in this world, and a bunch of elves join your party. But Lakian is just an archer with a lot of damage and a good magic grid, and yeah. So he took powerful war cries from Dijkstra just fine. But it's crazy. Like, we're talking about these characters with fondness, but the story with like borderline disdain, because this is a game with a bunch of creative, fun, cool character designs that you recruit, and the act of recruiting 120 characters and seeing your castle town build up is super good in this game. But like Zach alluded before, at some point they must have run out of time or budget or both, and the entire large parts of the story of this game feel rushed. And I wonder if maybe Noah becomes more interesting in some earlier draft of the story.
Yeah.
Or maybe we get more setup and more background for places like Athrobalt and Yarnon, where we just where which are places that seem important, we also just pass through and then never have to visit again for the entire rest of the story. But also I think the dungeon designs in this game are pretty good. Castle Hargantia, where you fight the leader of the Revenants, alongside the former leader of the Revenants, Marcos the Lich or Necromancer, who's very, very funny. He's like he's like a Skeletor ass bad guy that you're collaborating with, but he has a much higher opinion of himself than he actually deserves. I think Marcos is very funny.
Yes.
But like I think Castle Hargantia is a beautiful, interesting dungeon. And that proving ground dungeon where you have to like hit a switch to have the tunnel in front of you twist around to rearrange the staircases, like there was a lot of thought put into these dungeon designs, and they're visual spectacles that are interesting to explore, but then there's just nothing around them. I feel like that parts of this game were sort of designed independently from each other. Like a lot of work went into the Castletown building and some individual dungeons, and then felt like no work went into other parts of the game, like the strategy battles. I just thought I mean I don't like them. I don't like them.
Still don't know what I did with them.
I don't like them in Suikoden 2 or 3 either, but these
There's so much worse here.
they felt really bad this time. Like I think what they wanted to do is they wanted like events and plot to transpire on the battlefield, and then have like these sort of macro battles with troop movements fitting into the story, which is also true of the older Suikoden games, but it's not pulled off well at all. Like it you always just feel like you're just throwing your units at the enemy units and then seeing it work out, and it felt devoid. It was devoid of strategy or variety. I wish they had just gotten rid of them.
I mean, your strategy is put as many units on one tile as you can, and then throw yourself at the enemy. And in duels, it's like choose attack every time, and you're fine. They didn't balance the game. Like it felt like it needed another year in the oven. Honestly,
I forgot all about those duels. Like the
Right.
cutscenes in between duels are awesome.
Yeah, they're dope.
Oh yeah.
But then the actual act of doing the duels feels like you're playing rock paper scissors, but you know that 2 of your 3 moves are gimped.
Right. Yeah, it needed another year, and I hate to say that, but it just did. And it needed probably more money. Because like I agree, like there are so many parts of this game that work so well. But I will also say that like I think that the story itself, like it doesn't ever, like I think that their conceit was Ryu and Joey, and their conceit was never going to work with how they set it up. Because the end game doesn't work because the beginning of the game doesn't work. And so while there are so many, as you said, there's so many great things in terms of the character recruitment, the character design. Like the character designers in this game did so much work, and they did so much beautiful work, that it all just kind of comes to nothing. It's like Sound and Fury signifying nothing, as Shakespeare would say. Like it doesn't do anything by the end, and it's really disappointing for me.
I feel like this game had a vision and really executed on some parts of the vision, and but as a result, because of some shortcomings, feels like less than the sum of its parts. Like I would play another game like this just because of the town building and character recruiting, but I struggled to connect with any of the plot important characters in a major way. Like even in the final part of the game where the Dragonoots betray their king and Periel pretends to go to the other side to save herself, but really she was just trying to convince certain enemies, certain people on the enemy side to join your side. It felt like just so like inferior versions of similar plot points in Suikoden 1 or 2 that I can't. I mean, I try to separate Eiyuden from Suikoden when I'm making comparisons, because like Zach mentioned earlier in the episode, it's a little bit weak-minded to just talk about art in terms of other art. But I think you have to make the comparison here, and Eiyuden's just not as good as the games that it's obviously mimicking. But I mean, I confess I still had some fun with it because the base building and army recruiting is fun.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, actually. I feel like there's elements of it that are really well done, and they kind of, at least for me, carry the game still. But there's so much potential that's just not really explored as well as it could have in the plot and the characters.
Yeah, for me, I think Rabbit and Bear can make a good game.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was here, but it might have been a lack of budget, like what Zach said. But uh, it, I think I wish that they kind of went their own way and they didn't have to call back the Suikoden 2 so much. I think it would have been a bolder choice. Maybe it would
Yeah.
have it wouldn't have maybe it wouldn't have attracted so many backers, but I think they have something. They have like the kernel of something good with this first game, and I hope that with the sequel that they want to do, I think uh, they could actually make good on a actual good Suikoden successor.
Yeah,
I
I think
I
so
I,
too.
I agree, and I think that I think one of their fundamental problems with storytelling was that they wanted it to be Suikoden, but it wasn't. And so like they had good moments, but it was like outside of the main plot. So like if you think about all the things they do outside of the main plot, which are really strong, um, I think that they have the chops to do something good, and they certainly have the talent to do it because there are so many people on this team, even though we've lost Murayama, who have done good work. I mean, like Suikoden 4 is a better game than this game is.
Whoa. Okay.
It's the
Okay.
truth. It's the truth.
Huh. All
It
right.
is
Audra, do you
probably.
disagree? Yeah.
No.
Uh,
This game's more akin to like Woven Web, if I
yeah,
had to compare it to a Suikoden.
yeah, exactly. And that's not a positive comparison. But it's also like there's so much there's so much here that they could work with, and I think they
Mm-hmm.
can work with it. And I agree with you, Gio. I hope and pray that the next game they make is lives up to the talent they have working for them, and they stop living in the shadow of what they cannot match.
Mhm.
I have so many doubts about that though, because I think it was leaked that Eiyuden 2 is being planned.
Yeah,
Because
I think they just announced it.
yeah,
Yeah.
they announced it. It was not long after Murayama's passing, but because of the kind of game this is, it's going to be invariably compared to Suikoden forever. And I agree. This is a talented team, and there are good parts to Eiyuden Chronicle, but it needs like the time and care and writing to live up to those other games that I don't know if they'll ever get there. But so I found this game. I found Eiyuden Chronicle underwhelming. Like it had too much to live up for, and it did not match up to those expectations. But I thought it was still good, mostly because I enjoyed the mechanics of base building. So I'd probably play another one of these, but my expectations would be much more tempered going in. But I like the character designs and parts of the gameplay, and I mean that's enough for me. I played this thing for something like 55 or 60 hours, and I mean it's not going to be anywhere near the top of my game of the year list at the end of 2024. But I truly did not dislike it. Like it, I think this is it is a solid B or B minus of an RPG, but that's still well above a passing grade.
For the record, an 80 is a passing grade, so I agree.
And that was the
Yes.
score you gave it in your review
Indeed.
in April earlier this year. So I mean, so it looks like that we all like enjoyed / were disappointed by Eiyuden Chronicle in various ways. But let's assume that an Eiyuden 2 is coming and that each of us gets our hands on it. What's one change or major improvement you would really want? Like what do you think is the area of improvement that sticks out to you the most? Maybe other than just everything about the story.
I'll say something specific about the story instead, if that's okay. Um, I want there to be personal connections amongst the main characters because, like, even like Leanne is like known your main character for 2 days when this game starts. I want there to be a little more of a history. Like, we haven't talked about the true ending, and I'd be curious to hear about it because I have no idea what happened. But like, the main character has a sister here, and I don't know squat about her except for that she's cool. So I just want to know more about the people. I want the people to be at the forefront, and I want like there to be more gray instead of this black and white gray wannabe nonsense, which is what I think the story turned into.
Yeah, Lean is a strange character because they like no one mentions having a sister. She pops up here and there as a friend to the Guardians. She's evidently the luckiest human in the world, and just avoids danger at every step. But when she joins your party, she's the 120th recruit, so she only joins if you have the other 119. Before a scene in the headquarters towards the end of the game where there's an assassination attempt on Periel. But if
Can
you
I assume that if you recruit them all, Periel doesn't die?
correct, if you recruit them all, then Lean steps in, and because of her ridiculous luck, she deflects the arrow or whatever it was.
Okay.
But
That sounds worse than Periel dying. So, for the record.
I mean, I would make the maybe obvious comparison to Nanami and Suikoden 2 or Gremio and Suikoden 1, where your reward for recruiting everyone is saving one of the more loved characters in the game. But I mean, even then, because Lean is such a confusing presence, like is she really a chosen by the goddess character, or is she just Noah's sister with dumb luck? It's so strange. And when she does join, she has like average stats, but her rune grid is nothing but 4-star whatever you want. So she can be like any kind of build that you want, and her unique attack is a very powerful all hitting move. So she's confusing. Like why is this little girl like this? Why is she always coming and going? I don't know if an Eiyuden 2 would be about her or more, but I agree. There needs to be better attachment to these characters that just isn't here in the first game. Gio or Audra, do you have a suggestion for an area of improvement?
Okay, so for me, this is a bit. I hope this doesn't come across as mean, but like the music is not very good. I mean, Suikoden's had some moments where the music was like not very good, but there's also been a lot of really memorable songs. And I was kind of hoping that the soundtrack for Eiyuden Chronicle was better than it was, and so I hope that they can improve on it in a sequel. I got really sick of hearing that one song, the one that plays in the if you're playing on PS5, like right before you start the game, like
when you're hovering over the icon and you get that theme, it's everywhere in the game. It's a little. I agree that the soundtrack wasn't diverse or memorable enough. Maybe they could put some better talent there, but God, if anything, maybe it's because I would hear it whenever I paused the game, but I that is the one song I can remember from this game.
Yeah, it's sad because Noriyuki Iwadara is like involved in this game. Like he arranged the soundtrack.
And Michiko Naruki she's great in Wild Arms.
Yeah, no, both of them are really good composers, but I mean the I don't think the end result is. I mean, I'm not going to be getting a 4-disc compilation album of this thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
Audra, do you have one needs improvement area before we close up shop?
Well, I agree with what Zach and Gio said, and I'd probably add in maybe some mini games that make more sense because I couldn't figure out Begoma or cooking.
The cooking minigame was broken for a long time.
Cooking was bugged for a while, where they thought every single course was breakfast was appetizer. So if you just made omelets or coconut water for every single course, you would probably win. Complicated dishes were rated lower than simple dishes for some reason. So I believe they did fix that, but I was able to recruit Kurtz and his wife by just cooking omelets and coconut water for every single meal.
I mean, that doesn't
it's
sound
kind of
bad.
Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I managed to do it. So
I think the way it's supposed to happen is that rarer, more challenging dishes are supposed to score higher, but only if they're served at the appropriate course and only if your audience likes them. But but it was bugged at the beginning, and you could just cook eggs in coconut water and work every time. And you know what? I'm thinking with you, Audra. I thought the mini games in this game were just a little bit mid, but that's possible because I mean, earlier this year I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which are two games with excellent side content and mini games. And nothing in Eiyuden other than the active base building itself compared to either of those in terms of side content. But me personally,
I love those theater shows though.
the theater
Oh,
shows
the
are
theater
good.
shows are great.
I think you eventually can unlock 4 theater shows, but
Oh,
they're
okay.
but they're like rare scripts that have a 1 in 20 chance of showing up in a random town's inventory.
Oh, okay.
And I know the final one you unlock is Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, so you can
Oh. That's so fun.
so you can have like Isha playing CJ and CJ playing Isha or vice versa.
That's delightful.
I didn't unlock it because I didn't want to grind getting the scripts to unlock, but I did watch some YouTube videos of them. I mean, I think that the alternate game battle theaters are what I would change. I really was not interested in the strategy battles and confused by the one-on-one duels, although the cutscenes between the one-on-one duels were great. So if they just made those more interesting to actually play, I would have liked the game a lot more, or at least more excited to get to the next duel or strategy battle. But in their current state, I didn't like them at all. Like I didn't like the strategy battles in the older Suikoden games either, but these are worse. In conclusion, I think Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes makes me want to play the copy of Suikoden 5 I bought last year more than anything else.
That is a much better game. Promise.
So I've heard from you and many others. But
It's very good.
yeah, you know, speaking of really good PlayStation 2 games, next week on Retro Encounter, we're doing part 2 of Grandia 2, a very good Dreamcast RPG that was later ported to the PS2 and other places. Zach, I know that you recently finished that game for the podcast,
Yeah.
and I mean, no need to give too much away now, but did it hold up?
It holds up. It's an excellent, almost like perfect JRPG. It's excellent.
All right. Well, we can hear all about the second half of Grandia 2 on the podcast next week. But coming in July, we're at the end of June right now. We're doing 2 episodes on Dark Souls. You know, maybe you've heard of it. It's the Dark Souls of RPGs, so I've heard. It's developed a reputation and memes and a toxic community over the years. But when it comes down to it, Dark Souls is a really excellent solo action RPG. And I played it for the first time. I'm partway through it now. I'm in on Orlando for all of you Souls heads out there. But in about 3 weeks or so, we're gonna have 2 episodes on Dark Souls back to back. But before then, we're doing an episode where maybe a Dark Souls game or two will come up, or we're talking about the best of the PlayStation 4, which is a console that debuted right around a decade ago. So I guess it's retro enough to be on this show. I mean, we have covered several PS4 games in the past on Retro Encounter, but we're going to talk about a bunch of them in about 2 weeks, where we're going to jab about all of the best of the PlayStation 4. I've seen a preliminary version of our list, and it's very unusual. There's probably a couple games you're not expecting to see on it. Zach, I mean, I know you've seen the list too. There's a few unusual picks there.
There are some choices I wouldn't make. Yes,
but we will discuss my choices and Zach's choices and choices neither of us would make when that episode happens in a couple weeks. But also, I'm not sure it's going to be in July, but we are planning. I believe this is our 6th quiz show episode. We've done 5 quiz show episodes in the past on Retro Encounter. They are really, really fun to write and record, but require some extra work. So we're doing another quiz show, and it's happening later this summer, but we haven't recorded it yet, so I can't say exactly how it goes. But Zach,
it's also a special kind of quiz show.
It is. Zach, you are a contestant on it.
I am.
And maybe that's enough of a clue for listeners to figure out exactly what it is. But we are doing a 6th RPG fan Retro Encounter quiz show in a couple of weeks. But listeners, if you want to email us about or contact us about Eiyuden Chronicle or Suikoden or Grandia or Dark Souls or quiz shows, you can always email us retro@rpgfan.com or interact with RPG Fan on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, We have Twitch and YouTube channels. We have a dedicated Discord. And we have a website, rpgfan.com, where there are features and reviews and articles and news and previews and all kinds of stuff every week, including a lot of recent coverage about the multiple events surrounding Summer Games Festival, which is, June and July are the busiest time of year for video game announcements, and a lot of those were covered on rpgfan.com. We also, another great way to support RPG Fan is through our shop on rpgfan.com/shop. We have 2 links: one to a apparel store hosted by TeePublic, where you can find RPG Fan clothes, coffee mugs, phone cases, and all kinds of other things, as well as a link to Hyperplay RPG, which is a UK-based publisher that released an RPG Fan review compilation, a tome that's about 300 pages that has decades of RPG Fan reviews there, including from several of us here on this episode. So a great way to support RPG Fan is to buy things on the store or buy the book from Hyperplay RPG. There are also 2 other fine podcasts hosted by RPG Fan: Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness and what games are playing, and Rhythm Encounter every other 2 weeks about RPG music. You can listen to random, retro, or Rhythm Encounters on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, however you choose to listen. We would love for you to leave reviews and or comments and or positive feedback. But if you want to give us positive feedback as humans and not as podcasts, let's us, the panel, tell them, the listeners, how they can find us. Starting with you, Audra.
Email's the best way to contact me at audrab@rpgfan.com.
Now, Zach.
Email is probably the best way for me as well, zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on our Discord as ZachW.
Now, Gio.
Yeah, same here, geo@rpgfan.com, or on the Discord as NBstar, TENBISTAR.
Well, I wonder what video game that comes from. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably Dark
It
Souls.
must be Woven Web. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But listeners, if you want to find me, I'm not that hard to find online. You can find me on Instagram or Blue Sky or RPG Fans Discord as @evoker4dogs. But you know what? Oh man, we are almost at exactly 1 hour 20 minutes for this podcast. So I mean, maybe the edit will cut it down or fatten it up a little bit, but I mean, how remarkable would it be for this game with 120 heroes to go 1 hour 20 minutes? That's, I don't know.
That would be awesome.
That would be.
We can make it happen.
That would be very, very psychologically satisfying to me, although it's ultimately not important at all. But listeners, thanks for joining us. Thank you. Good night and good luck.